Hello, and welcome to the Field Podcast this week. Today, our ways to engage for this new episode with Laura Helgeson are as follows. And this episode is titled Laura Helgeson on UTI Advocacy, Misdiagnosis, and Mental Health, Creating Change and Choosing Kindness. The ways to engage are as follows. Do something for yourself today. Get a large coffee instead of a medium. Take yourself out to a restaurant that you've been wanting to try, maybe haven't yet. Stay in for the evening instead of going out if that feels more restful for you. Whatever it may be, do something kind for yourself. It doesn't have to be big, the little things add up. We hope this gives you some thoughtful ways to engage with this week's new episode with Laura Helgeson. She's talking about all things UTI advocacy and the effect this has had on her mental health, emotional health, physical health, and the change she is working to create in the world with kindness, empathy, and well-informed science and support. Take good care and enjoy this episode with Laura. Hello, Field Podcast audience. Welcome back this week. I've got a friend here with me that some of you met during the fall if you listened to our radio show that we had in 2024 on the Embracing Layers radio show. And you got to meet Laura Helgeson then and hear her story and the massively important work that she's doing in the space you're going to learn more about today as we unfold her story to you. And now it's time to bring her on the podcast. And I'm so happy to have her here with me. I met her through our good friends at Podmatch, and she is talking about in such an honest, authentic, resourceful, helpful, brave way, a topic we are not talking about enough in women's health and that too many women are being affected by. And there's way too many stigmas and narratives around this that need to be unpacked and dealt with. And we're going to get into what that is here shortly. But before that, I want to introduce Laura by her character traits and let you all get to know her as the wonderful human that she is. Laura describes herself as someone with kindness. She's focused, she's driven, and she's compassionate. Laura Helgeson, welcome to the Field Podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. You're going to have so much to say on this, and we're going to get right into it. Talk to me about prioritizing self-care in your life and what your journey has been with that. This has a whole other level and layer and component for you, and I'll let you get into that, but let's start with that piece in your journey with self-care.
Right. Thank you. For me, self-care has been a really long learning process through medical journey. And it's been a lot about learning to advocate for myself in medical settings and learning to know what my limits are when I'm working, when I'm doing social things, about what my body can show up and do and when I need to take a rest and become much more aware of the signals, which I think is a learning curve. It certainly has been for me. And so those are kind of my self-care practices. I mean, I have a spiritual practice that I do every day, and that I think is key. Keeps me on track, and I don't sway away from hopefully seeing people and the goodness that they are. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really good. You've had to, unfortunately, practice this in the medical setting because of something you've dealt with since you were really young. You've had ongoing urinary tract infections your entire life. This is something we don't talk about enough. It is one of those things that no one wants to talk about. We still whisper about it. There's still a lot of really unhealthy shame narratives around this topic. And it also doesn't get treated, with the seriousness that it needs to be treated with in much of the medical environment. And the amount of discomfort and pain and difficulty that can come with someone having this experience. And you have had to deal with that since you were very young. So this learning to advocate for yourself has had to be part of your self-care to actually take care of yourself and your health and your well-being. And then also, this goes into, confidently setting boundaries. You've had to be mindful about who you let into your time and space, who you trust with your time and space, where you're going to give your time, and who has basically earned the right to inhabit that because of this experience. So talk to me more about that.
Yes, I love the way you framed that. Really, to know what I both deserve in my own kind of opinion, as far as what
Mhm.
kinds of relationships I'm in. I really choose to be with people who I have kind of a synergy with and that
Mhm.
bring me joy. And there's kind of like, all I can say is it feels like a flow. And I just
Mhm.
love being with people who feel like a flow. For instance, this is kind of a negative example of that, but I was interested in trying a new therapy, and I had a 20-minute kind of phone interview with the physician who was going to be doing this. And I
Mhm.
just didn't have the connection. The connection
Mhm.
was not there. And I
Yeah.
got off that phone call and I thought, I love what she was saying, but this isn't a good fit for me. So I have to move on and find someone else. So it's things like that where I've gotten to a point of really kind of strong discerning of not
Mm.
only with the healthcare workers, but also with people,
Right.
coworkers. You have to choose when you have limited energy. And I think this is true for people who have a lot of energy. It just doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Who
Right.
do you choose to spend your time with?
Mhm.
And, it's about feeling good.
Yeah.
And, just some of these things don't feel very good, but if you can feel good working with someone, that's, I think, a main trait I look for.
Yeah. And you've learned to trust yourself. I mean, I think you said something so important. You trust that intuition, you trust the energy you're sensing, you listen to that and pay attention to that and really allow that to inform you.
Right. So that has taken a long time. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
59 years old, and it's taken a long time to really listen. I think it's a lot of inner
Mhm.
listening. How do I
Mhm.
feel after being with this person? Or what does that
Mhm.
statement or the energy that they're giving me feel like to my body? My body's so sensitive because of all the things it's been through. And I have to just treat it with incredible gentleness. And so learning to listen, I think, is one of the most valuable things we can do in life. It
Mhm.
can be for anything. It could be, should
Yeah.
I sign up for this contract for doing this thing? Should I go on this vacation? Whatever.
Yeah.
But just learning to listen to that inner knowing, we all have it. It's just
Yes.
about developing a relationship with it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the way you said that. That relationship is so important, and treating it that way. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
really important to approach it that way. Thank you. You're going to have a lot to say about this because this has impacted you so personally, but taking care of our emotional, mental, physical, spiritual health, all these spaces and places. Talk to me about the importance of that for you.
Yeah, I really feel like that's the center of my life. All the other things that I do, whether it be work or family relationships or even with my dogs, whatever it is,
Mhm.
stem from taking care of myself emotionally, physically. Like, for instance, it's been very, very cold where I live in Minneapolis. It's been
Mhm.
cold a lot this winter. And one week, my husband was gone for an entire week, and I have these two giant dogs. And I decided it was 17 below zero and that the dogs were just not going to have a walk that week because that was taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Even a year before this year, I was still feeling guilt trippy from my thoughts about what the dogs were
Mhm.
experiencing, that I forced myself out the door with my giant mittens and poop bags and all of that stuff. And I just decided, we have a fenced in yard. I'm not doing that this time. And I was
Yeah.
much happier. It's just little steps like that. I know that's just such a minor thing, but it was a big thing for me.
Well, those minor things add up. That is the
Yeah.
way you prioritize your wellness. And honestly, the dogs can get frostbite when it's below 15 below. So you probably help them too. And they have a yard to run around in. So it's not like they're cooped up in an apartment in the middle of the city with no
Right.
place to stretch their legs. But I think it doesn't have to be those big, grandiose things. It's those little ways we choose to honor ourselves. that that I think really add up and matter. You have dealt with urinary tract infections in a very, very severe way your whole life. That affects your mental and emotional health. Talk to me about how you've learned to cope with that. You've had to learn the hard way. I mean, you've had to
Yeah.
learn by experience. There was no magic book on this. So talk to
Yeah.
me about that piece.
Right. So I have had urinary tract infections or UTIs since I was 2 years old. And it's been almost 6 decades I've been experiencing these. And they've ebbed and flowed throughout my life. I
Sure.
had some pretty horrific and traumatic procedures done when I was very young, starting at around 4 years old.
Mm.
And that set up kind of an interesting inner world for me, that kind of trauma feeling. And then had, especially into my 20s, I started having other procedures that were very traumatic. And I've had to work a lot with that trauma. So, for instance,
Mm.
I hid this condition from everyone except for my sister and my husband, until a little over 2 years ago when I started this organization, because I did not want anyone to know I was suffering in this way. And it got to the point where I couldn't keep it a secret anymore because I couldn't work anymore. And
Mm.
I feel like just facing it head on and kind
Yeah.
of coming out, and really just coming out and talking about it, has been extremely scary and extremely liberating.
Yeah.
So it's just been so healthy for me to talk about it. And I think that that's what we need to do with these vulnerable issues that people feel shame around, which they shouldn't, because the body is nothing to be ashamed of.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's how have I dealt with it? I think part of it is I just kept going and kept
Mhm.
living my life no matter what. And I finally broke down and got some pain management maybe 10 years ago so
Mhm.
that I could keep living my life. It's just almost like being in reality, but also kind of tucking it away. And
Yeah.
then until I couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, with any difficult thing, it asks to be free at some point. I don't want to say
Yeah.
exposed. I don't think that's the right word, but just to be free. And I think it's really important to point out that we are nuanced. We can feel multiple things at one time. You were both scared and you felt free. And you can feel
Yes.
both of those things at the same time and carry them both. And they're both true. They're not one or the other. It's a both and. And that is part of this, as we're tending to ourselves when we're dealing with hard things, when we're carrying things we don't want to talk about, or secrets or shame, or we're worried about people's responses, or we've had to deal with enough. Because I would say over the years, knowing, having talked to you before, there's a lot of minimizing of your condition you've had to deal with over the years,
Yeah.
especially in the medical community. So there's a lot within you that's telling you people won't understand. I'm just not going to talk about it. They won't get it. And I don't want
Right.
to put up with being gaslit anymore because it's exhausting and it's not helpful. And so, but you do get to a point where, and I think that going back to that boundaries piece and knowing who your people are and knowing who you can trust, and then also trusting yourself, and that this is going to be best for me in the long run. And it's time for me to do this in honor of myself. And also, which this goes nicely into supporting ourselves and other women and living unapologetically. You are doing this now. You're not only doing this for yourself, you are working in ways that we'll get into throughout this conversation of supporting other women in this worldwide. And you're giving a voice to a topic that literally has little to no global voice. Like, you all have collectively created one by being brave and coming together and seeing an absolute need for it. And to me, that's just so much of how you show up for yourself and other women living unapologetically. Would you agree with that? Or do you have anything you want to add to that piece?
I really agree with everything you've said. Sometimes our greatest suffering also is the greatest gift to the world if we take it and run with it. If we're being nudged to do that, like the inner
Sure.
nudge,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's really what was happening to me. Have you ever done something where you just can't not do it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
might not want to do it because it's a huge undertaking, but there's something pushing you from within that you just have to do it regardless of really what you think about it.
Yeah. 100%. This podcast was that. It's like, we have to start having these conversations. I
Right.
don't know anything about a podcast, but I'll find some people to help me and we're going to start talking about these things.
That's exactly right. And I was a professional musician and an interfaith minister. And here I am with this illness my entire life and thinking, I have no idea how to start a business, but I'm going to
Yeah.
do it because it's needed. There was no other patient advocacy organization focused on UTIs in the US. Fortunately, we have some wonderful global partners,
Yeah.
and we've kind of joined together to be as helpful as possible. But I had no idea what I was doing, and I just started.
Yeah.
And just take baby steps.
And you figured it out. I mean, and this global coming together is recent but it took, I think so many times, that's what I love about women. We see a need and we respond to it. And we are like, nope, doesn't have to be this way. There's no resource. I'll be the resource. We'll start.
Exactly.
And I'm so glad you mentioned you're a musician by trade, and that is your creative. You've done that your whole life. That is what you've done. And so you're not coming from this medical background, but you dug in. You knew your own experience all too well. You started doing the research. You found these other people in Europe and Australia, and you connected all the dots, and you all came together to be a resource and an advocate and a voice. And I have to think there are women listening today. They're like, oh my gosh, there's a resource like that for us. UTIs are so common.
Yes.
They're so common. And they vary in the amounts and the regularity that people deal with them. But I don't know any woman who has not had at least one.
Right.
I mean, I just don't know any, including myself. Now, I've only had a couple my whole life, and they were easily.
Let's keep it that way.
Okay, crossing fingers. I'm 55, crossing fingers, because I know
Yes, let's keep it that way.
come up as we get older, because I've watched that with a couple of grandmothers and my mother-in-law. So I know that these are things that can. So at this point of my life, very fortunate, was able to easily resolve them and do adopt practices would help me not to get them again, all those kinds of things. That doesn't work for everybody. I mean, that is, some are very much more chronic than others. And we're at the chronic end, but just like so many things in women's health, because of these are so much more common in women than they are men for a lot of reasons, and that biologically makes sense. And like so many things, they have been kind of pushed to the sidelines and not taken all that seriously, and
Exactly.
and pushing you into this space of not being heard.
That's very true. Yeah. You mentioned chronic, and we really do address recurrent and chronic infections because those are the ones that don't resolve easily.
Yeah.
But just to let everyone know, chronic UTI is not recognized in our medical literature in the United States. So that word is not to be found anywhere. It has not yet been even recognized. So when you talk to clinicians and researchers, they're doing their best job following guidelines. They can only really say recurrent because there isn't any sort of line item for chronic and guidelines for chronic. Right. So, we have some work to do. We have so much work to do around so many things, but just, I have experienced chronic UTIs since menopause, the onset of menopause. And I think people are in different phases of this. It doesn't even really matter their age. Menopause is a common time to come into this. But, there are various phases and intensities of this illness, and it can be quite dangerous. I mean, it can certainly
Yeah.
diminish someone's life to the point of not being able to work, losing primary relationships, because intimacy gets really affected by this.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is a major health problem. You said you don't really know someone who hasn't had one, a woman who hasn't had one. The number right now is like 60% of women will get one in their lifetime,
Wow.
but 30% of those women will go on to have recurrent and chronic UTIs. So it's a
Oh,
huge
wow.
portion of
That's
our
a big
population.
percentage.
Yes, it is. And it just, for some reason, it's been swept under the rug for so long. I think it's been acknowledged as some sort of like a little women's infection. You can just give them a handful of antibiotics and it will get better. Some people have that experience, which is fabulous. I love that. But
Mhm.
I would think at this point, the people more and more often are not having that experience because of antibiotic resistance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. You can only
right.
take them so many times, and then your body builds a resistance, and then you take stronger ones, and you build a resistance to that.
Yeah,
And there's all kinds of dangers and side effects that go with that reoccurrent prescription of
yeah,
antibiotics for a lot of different reasons.
yeah.
It messes your gut biome up big time, which just
That is
adds
interesting.
adds more. I mean, just you keep piling on the problems of things you're already having
Right. The
problems.
thing that's sad is there really isn't another,
Yeah.
sort of frontline treatment available. So what are you going to do with a woman who's possibly going septic from urosepsis, for sepsis from a UTI? Are you going to just withhold antibiotics? Or from someone who can't function without antibiotics, even they're not curative, they're sort of they make the infection less obvious. You can go through your
Yeah.
day. And so it's a conundrum right now. And there are other therapies in other parts of the world that hopefully will come to market here. And there are other, scientists that are working on other kinds of, therapies and the way therapies are given to somebody.
Okay.
But those just aren't here yet.
Yeah.
And so what do we do in the meantime when, women are suffering, and it is mostly women until like geriatric
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
Right. It is mostly women. Women are suffering to such a large degree. And it really is a ginormous burden I've heard it's over $2 billion burden on our, financial system
Wow.
every year. Yeah.
Wow.
So and that's probably very modest if I
Yeah, that's
would.
just what we know about.
Right. Exactly. Right. Just the numbers of supplements and various things that an individual has to pay for out of pocket to try because they're desperate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
Wow. Well, and so you've answered the call to this
Yes.
and decided, okay, I'm going to be a resource and a source of support, and we're going to let you share about all of those resources before we wrap up today. But I want to get into, this is, you are a kind person by spirit. And so this really, your why and your values behind this work is very, very tied to your compassionate kindness pieces of your character traits. But talk to me about this pathway of the why and behind starting this. Like was it, I think I know the answer, but I want you to share with the listeners, what did it really just come down to? There's no resources for patients. There's nobody helping patients. Somebody's got to do this. Is that kind of where it birthed out of?
Yeah, I had gotten to the point that I was unable to leave my house really because I was in so much pain. I had so much frequency. I had to stay really close to the bathroom. And I just was becoming very non-functional in a kind of a physical way. My brain was still good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kept looking for a US resource because there are other resources that are available to people who live here, but there wasn't anything with a patient advocacy kind of bent. That was
Sure.
the focus around UTIs in the US. And I kept thinking, can't be true. There are
Yeah.
support groups that are wonderful, but sometimes I think you just need an organization to get into other places that maybe support groups and individuals would have trouble getting into.
Sure.
So I just thought an organizational route is the way I have to go rather than an individual route so
Yeah.
that I'm taken seriously in a kind of a different sort of way.
Sure.
Um, so I just decided it became this thing that was so loud inside of me that I had to kind of discharge it. Like I have to start
Mhm.
because the inner push is so loud that not starting is going to drive me a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
So I just started, and the first thing I did was built a website. And I really did reach out to especially Live UTI Free in the UK. Um, they're the lead there, the CEO there, Melissa Kramer. I have many Melissas in my life, by the way.
I love
Fortunately,
it.
they all have. Right now, I'm working very, a lot with 3 different Melissas. Fortunately, you all have different last name letters.
Mhm.
So I'm so grateful for that.
Okay.
but
Melissa C. Melissa
yeah, yeah,
K.
it must be that Melissas are just so wonderful.
Okay, I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So I talked with her and she was so helpful and she really became a mentor to me. And I still regard her
Mhm.
as a mentor to me today. And we've
Uh,
become collaborators as well.
uh,
And really, she helped me to sort of see maybe where I needed to begin. And I could check in with her here and there. She was
Sure.
really helpful to me. So I just started. I built a website and I kept thinking, like, what needs to be on here? And I just kept adding to it. And, we've added more things as the years have gone by. And I plan to make it an even better resource as time goes by. But I made myself go into a scientific conference. I was so scared. They were having a Eurobiome conference in San Diego. I began this in January of 2023, and this conference was in March of 2023. So I
Mm.
I barely even had any business cards printed.
You are
So
brand new.
yeah, I went to the conference, but part of the reason I went is because Melissa Kramer from Live UTI Free flew over to
Mm.
the United States for this
Oh,
conference. And I
wow.
thought, I just want to meet her. And
Yeah.
I ended up making so many wonderful connections with researchers who are doing amazing work
Oh, wow.
in this space. And that was just a really valuable thing. And I realized I could go to these research conferences and hear about what's happening and then
Yeah.
hopefully try to fill a gap between what research knows and what's being taught or what clinicians know. Because
Yeah.
in a way, clinicians are really at a disadvantage because they don't have good tools, they don't have good testing tools, they don't have
Mhm.
good treatment tools, and
Mhm.
they're not getting the information trickling down from research
Yeah.
to let them know, like, here's what is really happening, and this is why the testing doesn't work very well, and those kinds of things. And if I can be a bridge at all in that way, I would love to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you brought up something so important. And a guest that I had on last season, Bethany Corbin, she's playing that role in the femtech industry where she's working with the technicians who are creating all these things for women's health. And she's the go between them and letting the doctors and practitioners know and trying to bring them all together. And like this, and she's an attorney and a former law professor by trade, but had been got involved in the femtech industry through one of her cases and was like, wait a minute, this is a place I can go and I can be that voice in the middle that hopefully brings everyone together to understand each other even exists. And that's really,
Right.
yeah. And also,
Exactly.
too, how encouraging it is to know that there's actually people doing research on this, that isn't just you're not just on this island of this thing that's never going to be solved, that nobody knows about or nobody cares enough about to research or do anything about. I mean, even just what that does mentally to know it exists and that you can let other women know, other people know, other practitioners know, hey, did you know about this? Did you know this
Right.
is
There's a
happening?
UTI Global Alliance that's based here in the United States, but it is a global alliance of researchers,
Oh,
and
wow.
they are working on UTIs. And, thank goodness there's a group like that. There's another wonderful group that is NIH sponsored, and I really don't know what's going to happen with NIH
I
sponsored
know.
things at this moment,
I
but
know.
they're called Caribou, and that's an acronym, and
Mhm.
they're doing wonderful research on benign urologic conditions, so things that aren't cancer, and they
Yeah.
really have been so open to me about including me as a patient and helping
Wow.
me to understand what they're doing, including me in some of their education efforts. And I've just been so grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are
Wow.
some good
Wow.
people doing great things. Yeah.
That's good to know. And also, what huge kudos to you for taking this on and seeing this need, because you're helping move the needle in this conversation. And again, just giving hope. I know there's women listening today that didn't know this was happening, that didn't know this is going on, that this exists, that this is something they can ask about and
Right.
and
Mhm.
bring up. And so thank you so much for that. And for being the kind, compassionate person you are, and being able to take this thing that's been a burden to you in so many huge ways, but also like, okay, wait a minute, I got to do something with this. There's a way we got to move this conversation. We've got to move this needle. But I don't want to just leave. Go ahead, but then I want to segue into
Yeah.
something.
I think the thing that our vision really is to talk about UTI everywhere and have it regarded seriously because there is
Yeah,
so much dismissal in the healthcare setting. And maybe it's because the doctors just don't have any good resources, right?
yeah,
But there is a collaborative thing that needs to be happening in the healthcare office.
yeah,
Um, Between the healthcare worker and the patient. But just the idea that we need to be able to talk about this, like if this were a lung infection or a throat infection, you could say to your employer, I can't come in. I've had a lung infection that is like so entrenched in my tissues of my lungs that I haven't been able to get rid of it for 10 years and I can't function anymore. And you'd be fine saying that to an
oh, I didn't
employer.
think twice about it.
Right. I mean, some people might be hesitant because they don't like to do that with employers, but
Sure.
that wouldn't be a big deal. But you ask them to go, the same person who has a UTI, say, I have a urinary tract infection and it's diminishing my life that I cannot come into work physically anymore. I don't think anyone would do it.
No, no,
It
because they'd be
has to
poo-pooed and
be like,
dismissed.
it's just a body part.
Yeah, yeah. Or what's
Yeah.
wrong with you? You're not very tough. I mean, those the
Or,
you the
or you must be dirty.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
that. Yes. Oh my gosh. Why
Not
aren't you taking
true.
care of yourself? Why
It's a
haven't you
bacterial infection.
yeah.
Being hygiene, might have something to do with it, but
By and
that
large, no.
it doesn't, right? Yeah.
Yeah, again, those old stories and narratives and stigmas that exist that
Mhm.
don't apply, that aren't actually based in science. I mean,
Right.
there's so many
Exactly.
pieces of that. Um,
Right.
I want to segue to the music is a big part of your life and a
Hmm.
big part of your existence. Talk to me about how that has been, you know, is such an important part of your who you are as a person too, and how, the role that that has played in your life.
Hmm. I was born into a family of professional classical musicians. They were string players, the highest level in orchestras in the country. And so it was kind of the family job.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I was kind of expected to go into this, and I did. One thing that I didn't do was I did not go by my parents' kind of rules, which were you can
Mm.
play violin, viola, cello, or piano. And I was like, no, I'm going to play the bassoon.
Which I love. Just like, no. Take those string instruments. That's your thing. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way.
I
I
tried
love that.
violin. I tried violin for a very long time, but it became quite obvious to me that I was never going to be as good as my parents.
Yeah.
So I switched course and I became a professional bassoonist. I went to music conservatory and I played in operas and ballets and just every kind of thing you can imagine. I substituted with some major symphony orchestras and it was an incredible experience. I mean, I recorded with Janet Jackson. It was just a cool
Wow.
experience. I love
Yeah.
traveling. But then again, I had a physical thing that happened where my shoulder just was kind of falling apart and I was unable to hold the instrument.
Yeah. Because
But
it's not
I'll tell
small.
you, right. Yes, it's a large instrument. The loss of that, there's an intimacy with performing,
Mm.
with like, especially with chamber music, like small groups playing
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
There's an intimacy of breathing together, looking at each other, giving each other little cues of what you're going to do next. And the loss of that was really one of the most, um, I felt a lot of grief around that. I still feel grief around it. It's been
Mm.
like almost 20 years since I stopped playing. So,
Mm.
um, but it's shaped everything. If somebody was to say, what was your career? I'd say music.
Mm.
Even though I'm doing this now, I would still say
Yeah.
music because I just feel it's in my cells.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so such an intricate part of you, and this really goes nicely into living out of your own expectations versus others. You went on your own road, even with your parents. You're like, gonna go. I'm veering this way, and it worked out wonderfully. I think
Yeah.
it's also important to that we acknowledge the need to mourn when a season ends. We talk a
Mm.
lot about the importance of mourning losses of people. I don't think we talk enough about mourning the loss of a season. You hear it a little bit here and there when people retire, but at like at an expected age.
Mhm.
Because of what was happening with your body, you had to, I would imagine, cut this short before you were feeling ready to. Like this
Oh,
was not a choice that you
25.
wanted to make.
Yeah. 25, 30 years short for sure. I would still be
Wow.
performing now. Yeah, it was a big loss. And, um, it set me on other journeys, but that doesn't mean I don't grieve it.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, and I think, yeah, you were able to shift gears and see other opportunities and take a hold of those at the same time. I think, again, it's important to realize that when a season comes to end, it doesn't have to be. And you talked about that community piece. Communities are such an important part of our
Mhm.
health journey and and that was such a unique, intimate community that you can't really recreate in
No, you
another way.
can't.
And
I don't
so,
know of anything like it. Playing chamber music. I'm trying to think if there's anything like it. People, in a choir or in a small chamber choir, a
sure.
lot more people have experience with that, and
Yeah.
maybe they don't have a conductor and they're breathing together in order to go into the next thing, the
Mhm.
next phrase. So maybe more people have experience with that, but I just can't. I'll have to think about that, Melissa. Like,
Yeah.
what else would be like that? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to bring that up because those
Mhm.
are things that we need to take time and sit with and process and not minimize. I mean, I want the takeaway today for women to be don't minimize these things that are hard for you. Don't
Mhm.
minimize and compare. We are so guilty because of not, and I don't mean guilty in a like a shameful way, guilty of, but just by nature of the culture we live in and
Mhm.
and the way we're told to process and move through and handle things or not. I mean,
Yeah.
move on, get on with it, whatever. But
Exactly.
we don't, pay attention again goes back to those cues and it's okay to feel what you feel and it's good to advocate for yourself and don't allow someone to minimize your experience
Right.
and the space and place and ways you need to move through it, deal with it, acknowledge it, all those things. So thank you so much. I wanted to share that piece because that's a part of your story
Mhm.
too, and
Thank
what
you.
you've learned from that. So thank you so much for that. Which goes nicely into accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. There are
Exactly.
I mean, this is
We are so
exactly
layered. Right.
yes. And we've talked about some of your layers already, and these are
Mhm.
tricky layers, some of them. So talk to me about that layers piece and just being able to own and acknowledge, and you don't have to love, but getting okay with minus the shame and
Mhm.
feeling a regret and feeling like you got to like not talk about that as much. And just getting to this space where you really are in today with your layers.
I feel like layers are so much of the life journey, right? I mean, we are one way when we're, especially like I'm thinking about like middle school ages when we're going through puberty, and we're just in a certain kind of way then. And then as we head into our young adulthood, we just have so much. hopefully some energy and maybe a lot of idealism, things like that. Oh, this is, the way it should be in the world or whatever. I don't know if it's true for everyone, but for me, as I've aged and gone through really hard things,
Mhm.
um, I've come to a lot of gray. Like, it's just like, I
Mhm.
can't really judge what somebody else is going through. And you said something earlier about comparing. Oh my gosh, that's a, terrible rabbit hole to go down. Comparison, like, oh, I should be able to do it because someone else can do it, or whatever those comparisons are. Um, for me, it's been really about embracing the fact that I am chronically ill, that it
Mhm.
don't have to be a different way. That is a challenge to me
Mhm.
quite often, even still, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I should be able to do this, you know, backwoods ski, whatever it is that my family is doing, but I just can't right now. That's just the way
Yeah.
it is. I used to be able to, so there's been a lot of loss with
Yeah.
physical abilities, and that's a whole thing. Anybody who is experiencing any illness, whether it be for a week with a cold or cancer diagnosis or a lifetime of chronic illness or whatever it is, just dealing with the loss of certain parts of your life is,
Mhm.
those are layers.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about embracing that grief. I have to like love it and be with the grief and not run away from it, hold it close to my heart, because then I feel like I can manage being with it. Like I can manage my life. Like my life doesn't feel so bad as long as I've loved up that part of me that feels sad that I couldn't do
Yeah.
the ski. Yeah.
Well, and someone said something to you one time, and I think it is can be a really healthy way to look at it too, is that grief comes because you loved that thing so well.
Yes.
You enjoyed that thing. And so being able to with love comes grief, and it comes in different ways. And you can kind of you don't have to love the part that you can't enjoy it anymore, but you can also appreciate the fact that you did and you got to
Yes.
have that experience. And sit with the grief and honor the grief, because that thing was that experience, doing these things with your family. You loved the skiing, but also the community with the family piece, and you got to have that experience, and you knew it and you felt it and you loved it. So it's
Mhm.
natural and normal that you would grieve it. And so you can and embrace that grief, knowing of the love that was experienced in that
Yeah.
way. You know what I mean?
Well, I absolutely know what you mean, but I'm not sure I'm as far along as you're describing.
Oh, I'm
You
not
know,
sure I
like,
am either. Uh,
right.
but
I'm
it was
still at
the
the part
way.
like, oh, woe's me, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, oh, no. I'm
You
still in the FOMO stage for sure when something like that happens, but it gave me a different way to think about it.
I love that, like change of perspective
Yeah,
that I had that experience, so I know what it is, and that's why I'm grieving, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what it is, and so it's
Yeah.
because I don't wanna miss out on anything, so I am and yeah, especially when it comes to my family and my kids, I will do anything to not have to miss out on something if there's any way I can. But yeah, when she said this to me, I was like, "That's a really healthy,
It is.
informed way to look at that." And even if you're not there yet, which I'm not, it just gave a different lens. I'm like, "Okay, that
Yeah,
gives a
and
lens."
everything really ebbs and flows. Like we create
Yeah.
some strength around something, and then something else comes up, and you're like, "Oh, I have to create more strength now because that thing is here staring me in the face."
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah,
Yeah.
life is a very interesting thing, and we just have to be gentle with ourselves and know that whatever it is that we're doing, that we can offer good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're
Mhm.
doing that. You're exhibit A of that so much. You really are. Um, in living out feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, which you have learned to do through all of these steps and seasons in your life. Talk to me about how that has impacted your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with other people.
So after I had to stop playing music, I had this word in my head, which was minister. And I
Mm,
grew up in a Jewish family. And
mm,
so it would not stop. It's the same thing of those inner nudges. Sometimes they come to me as like a word or a voice, or sometimes they just come to me as a feeling like I can't not do something.
yeah,
But this was like minister. And when I have, gifts from the creator or whatever it is that I'm supposed to do, usually it's pretty insistent.
Yeah.
And so it was like minister, minister, minister for 3/4 of a year, would not stop. No matter where I went and what I did, it was in my brain. And so I thought, what can I do? My first thing was, I can minister to people just being a nice person and being compassionate and helping when needed or whatever. And then it would not go away. So I found an interfaith seminary in New York, and I studied there for 2 years. And that was as soon as I do the thing that whatever the voice wants me to do, then it stops.
Yeah. All right. You got there. Thanks for staying with me.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
same thing with Let's Talk UTI. That was in my brain since about 9 months ago, and it wouldn't stop until I decided to change the name of the business.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just funny. But anyway, that process, I can't remember your exact question right now, but
Just
you refresh me?
yeah, absolutely. So you have on this journey, you have really learned how to find your empowerment, embrace your layers.
Yeah.
And so how that has impacted your relationship with yourself as well as
Yes.
your relationship with other people.
Right.
So you
So
follow
that particular journey, thank you for refreshing me.
Yeah.
That journey through seminary and the practices that we had to do of all of the world's religions, maybe not all, but most of the world's religions, we had to take them on for a few months and then we'd move on to another one. And it really was so impactful in having me learn myself and also be able to see others that, we're all really the same. It doesn't matter, what you're wearing or what religious practice you do or what you call God or whatever, it's all basically the same. We're just, showing up, trying to love each other.
Yeah.
And so that process was extremely important to my embracement, like me embracing myself.
Sure.
And then I developed a course on forgiveness. Forgiveness is path to wholeness, which I taught for quite a while to people who were struggling with addiction and their family members. And it was such a beautiful learning for me. If they got something out of it, great. But I really learned a lot through that process. And just basically that forgiveness, we can't skip over how we feel. Like if you're not ready to go to that forgiveness place, still hold and embrace all of your, whatever you're going through about whatever situation it is. But that ultimately, forgiveness is just sort of like a lack of judgment. It's just acceptance of other people and that their sort of holiness and also of mine as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that interfaith concept. I think we could really use that in the world right now to create the empathy and understanding that there are multiple paths and ways, and there's going to be different paths and ways that work for everyone. But if we can honor each other's values within that, rather than pointing fingers and being my way or the highway,
My or the highway.
Counterintuitive to a loving God. It's just so counterintuitive.
Exactly. And also it's kind of boring, honestly.
Yeah.
It's so much more interesting to have other things to learn from or look at or understand, just like examples of other things. You don't even have to even buy into it. It's just like, oh, this is how they do it.
Well, and just perspectives and practices that might align with you. The ability to take all these beautiful pieces and parts and bring them together and see the good and the value in all of them, I think is incredible. And then that you were able to kind of share that component. I think forgiveness is such an interesting conundrum, I think, for people that come from a very strict evangelical, like conservative type of background, because it so many times does not allow you the space to get to a point where you're actually ready.
Right. We need to allow that. I've heard people in my community call it spiritual bypass. If you're not allowing yourself that time to be held, like let's say somebody betrayed you, to just feel what that feels like. And you can't just skip to, I forgive that person.
Yeah.
Right. They hurt you. Like that's a real thing, and you're experiencing what that feels like. And so once you do get beyond that sort of like intensity of the hurt, and it could take years to get there, or it could take a day, or it could take a month, or whatever. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
depends on how it is for you. Once you get to that place where it's calmer, then
Mhm.
you can start to adopt some of the forgiveness practices to see their wholeness, to see
Yeah.
the truth in them. Maybe they're not acting out of the truth in them, but the
Sure.
truth in them is truly love, right?
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
takes a while to get there, and we can't skip over the middle part.
Yeah, you can't exactly. And I think
Right.
too, the I have I am working really hard too. I have not, I talk about this a lot right now because I need to hear it every day because I have not mastered it, but the ability to be curious rather than judgmental.
It's
The
really
abil-
hard.
It is very hard,
Yeah.
but it's something that I try to utilize to keep me on tracks first with myself
Hmm.
and like, okay, that's coming up for me instead of like shaming that or talking badly to myself about it. Let's get curious about it. And then
Love
also
it.
that enables me to apply that same principle to other people, whether it's people I don't understand that I know very well, that I'm just like, oh my gosh, where I can at least get to a place of, I don't have to like what they've done with it, but I can at least get to a place of like, given this narrative in their life, I can see how they could get here. I don't,
Right.
it's not what I would have chosen, and I don't think
Mhm.
it's great, and it's gonna, impact the way for me to healthily engage with them, but it takes away that um moral thing of you're bad, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a kind of the key problem right now, period.
Yes,
Like,
that right
if we
there.
could just heal that, like, and be curious, like you said, I think we'd have a very different world.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. That was so good. And so your relationships, we talked about earlier, you've had to be very mindful of who was safe and who you could share things with and who you could explore with. Talk to me about that getting their piece and being kind of at peace with that because you had to go
Yeah.
through a lot of difficult things, especially in the medical field, of getting to a spaces and places, but also personally too. It's difficult to
Right.
share and it impacts so many parts. For the UTI piece, it impacts so many parts of your life, your ability to be socially present, engage,
Mhm.
intimacy, all those things.
Right. Um, I don't think those things ever go away for people. They certainly haven't for me. I have a situation right now that I'm trying to deal with that is challenging.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I think the best thing that I've learned to do in situations is to say, let me get back to you. And then
Mm.
just step away, give it to, a higher power and say, how would you have me handle this?
Yeah.
Um, and just listen, but
Yeah.
then listen, not like make it up, or you know what I mean? So that I don't react out of, an immediate feeling of anger or irritation or whatever it is, or even for good things, like,
Mm.
let me get right back to you on this because do I sign that contract that's going to give me a lot of money or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Is
Yeah.
this the right thing? Right. So I think we just have to give ourselves a little time to process what's happening.
Mm.
And then we'll come out the other side, I hope, or this happens for me. I hope I come up out the other side with, most importantly, me feeling like I have integrity for myself. It's
I
really
love
not about other people. It's about how I feel that I am in integrity, that I haven't stomped all over everyone. And honestly, I just really feel like every time I do something like this, it's really a reflection of my own healing. Like, I need to do this for me, right? This
Yeah.
person's giving me the opportunity to find a way that I don't have to have these like little things always like turning the screw at me or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's so good. I love that in integrity piece. If we are in
Mhm.
integrity and
Mhm.
honoring ourselves, we are going to show up that way in the people we're engaging with. And integrity draws integrity. People figure out
Yes.
real quickly. We teach people how to treat us in so many ways subtly that we don't understand. But it's
Right.
that, like, if that line in the sand is your integrity and your values, then that really puts up, okay, this is how I'm showing up. Therefore, this is what I will be drawn to and will be drawn to me as well when I when I approach it in this
Right.
manner.
Same thing with anything, medical procedures, prescriptions you may or may not want to take or whatever. You can say to the clinician, I hear you, this is interesting. I'd like to go do some of my own research and get back to you. You
Yeah.
don't have to answer right then. They don't have to be up on a pillar over you.
Mm.
Because oftentimes, especially in the UTI world, patients oftentimes know a lot more than clinicians as far as, what research knows. And, if they know that the testing is up to 70% inaccurate, then their integrity is intact if they say, this testing doesn't seem to really work. Even
Mhm.
if the physician might not like that,
Mhm.
you know, it's
There's
okay.
other
Yeah.
it is okay. I'm so glad you brought that up because we
Mhm.
treat medical doctors so many times as experts. And not that they aren't, but also they're practitioners. It's a
Exactly.
practice. And one
Mhm.
of my Rochelle Davis was on a panel show, and she's been a podcast guest as well with me. And she talked about, let's remember, practice is a key component of this. Ongoing research, ongoing learning. It's
Exactly.
okay for you to advocate for yourself. And if that person, that doctor, that practitioner doesn't respond in a way that is open to that, you can find another one.
Exactly.
You don't have to put up with that. So I'm
That's
so glad you brought
exactly
that
right.
up. Yeah.
Exactly. I think as women, we really do need to have a strong advocacy muscle in us because
Yeah.
no one else is going to do it.
No, no. And nobody
Right.
knows our bodies like we do. We're the
Right.
ones living
Exactly.
in our bodies and having our experience. No one else can speak for that. Thank you so much. So good. All right. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Resting. I love watching Netflix and other platforms. That nourishes me. I love, love, love taking walks in nature. And that's been
Mm.
sometimes a little out of reach, but I just love it
Yeah, it's
so much.
15 below in Minneapolis right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe not
Exactly.
today,
Right.
but spring's
Yeah,
coming.
exactly. I love being with my dogs. They're just goofy and funny. They also drive me a little crazy, but they're funny. They bring lightness to my life. And then also I love reading.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love
I have
that.
a weird genre that I always read, which is stuff about stories regarding World War II. Usually it's women's stories around World War II.
Yeah.
I've been in that genre for like 20 years. I do not know why I can't get out of it. There are a lot of books.
There are, and I love a good women's history narrative
Yeah.
around those. Me too. Because there's
Yeah.
so many women. There's actually a podcast that focuses on that. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it focuses on women in history and
Hmm.
going back thousands of years that we've
Yeah.
never heard about, that we've never learned about, that have done remarkable things. So I love that. That's so good. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
I want to feel pain free.
Oh, yeah.
That feels a little unrealistic to me, but I would love that. I
Yeah.
would like to feel free. I think more so than pain free is just free.
Yeah. In your
Free.
spirit and all. Yeah.
My spirit and how I move in the world. And that would be so great. So I don't know if that was 1 or 2 words. I would like to experience love for
Mm,
myself, from myself to myself and with other people.
mm,
Um, that was 3 words. Laughter.
mm,
Just love laughter. Such
mhm.
a balm for everything.
Yes.
And family.
Mm. So good. And I think, those 5 words are really key components for us right now in this season of that we're in.
Yes.
You and I are in the US, so I don't
Mhm.
think I have to tell anybody who's paid half attention to the headlines. It's a little chaotic here right now.
Yes.
And and for women, there's a lot of concerns,
Absolutely.
about those things that we have talked about today, in terms of our health and research,
Mhm.
the freedom
Mhm.
piece, the
Yeah.
pain-free in multiple ways piece that,
Yeah.
and the holding family close. So there's a lot of value and meaning in those things right now. And so thank you for sharing that. All right. Let people know, Laura, how they can find you and follow you. And this will all be on our resources page at embracinglayers.com, listeners, but share with people real quick right now how to find
Okay, great. Our website is letstalkuti.org. There's no apostrophe in the let's. Instagram is at Let's Talk UTI. And Facebook is the 3 words, Let's Talk UTI. And yeah, we have some wonderful resources on our website. A lot of blogs now that have been developed, just really about things like advocating for yourself or
Yeah,
what is a recurrent UTI, those kinds of things. It's a
sure.
great resource. We have some support groups that you can link to through our website and
Mm.
some advanced testing choices that you can link to. There's a whole bunch of things. So it's kind of fun for people to just move around and find if they find something that really suits them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought up the Facebook. I think that the community piece in this is so important to know you're not alone because these things that we experience can feel so isolated. I don't have to tell you. You know.
Yes.
That's why you created
Well,
this is to
yes.
lessen that feeling of isolation and let women know you're not alone in this. We're going to talk about it. We're going to highlight it and we're going to make sure we're in tune to the places that are doing something about it and letting the medical world know, hey, we're here and and we need you to pay attention. So thank you so much for creating that. I know that that is such a huge, there is something, and that's good for your mental and emotional health to know
It's so
you're
good for me.
not
It's given
alone.
me a purpose. So I don't just have to, be strapped to my home without something really mind engaging and challenging to do. So I'm really happy to have that to do, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved this conversation. I knew you would have so much to offer us. Ladies, take good care of yourselves and if you're not one who's had this experience with UTIs specifically, I know you know women that have. Let women know that this resource exists. Let women know that they need to inform themselves and they can start asking their doctors, do you know about the research? Have you heard about this? Are you connected to it? It's by creating more dialogue and asking the questions, and don't let them tell you nothing's being done. Like, no, no, no. Yes, it is. It's right here. And advocate for yourself and know that you're worth advocating for and know that there's women out there that want to do this with you. So
Yes.
that is a takeaway today.
Thank you
Was
so much for having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Absolutely. I knew as soon as you reached out to me, we connected via Podmatch. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, we are going to talk about this. And we're going to talk about it more than one time. You can also go on our panel conversations and you'll be able to find Laura there as well, because of a panel conversation happening by the time this releases, it probably will have already happened, but we're having a whole panel about UTIs and periods and the stigmas and resources. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation on this platform, and these resources are going to be available to you on the resources page at embracinglayers.com because this is one of those topics we've got to move the needle on and remove the stigmas and create safe spaces for women to feel informed and heard and know that work is being done on their behalf. So thank you so much for the role you play in the world in this area.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Take good care of yourselves this week, ladies, and have a great week. Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the Field Podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. And engage with this framework in written form with your journal or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We Feel women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you and having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.